right. Greetings and welcome back. Have you seen the Shine documentary? Hold on one second. Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Zamuna, the Shine documentary. I'm going to give my reaction. And as you already know, kind of look a little bit further into the back story because that is where I think, personally, right, you get some real good take home value. So, welcome to the conversation. I actually saw the documentary last week, but if you're new here, I was busy on my little challenge for writing a novel in 7 days. So, I got a little distracted, but I'm back now, okay? And we're going to go into it. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to do a little spoiler alert. If you have seen it, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. So, essentially, this documentary, I think it was done really good. It was done well. It's the proper term. When you're looking at it and the way in which they put it together and the way in which they told the story, because that's what a good documentary does. A good documentary tells a story. I think it was done. It was done tastefully, regards to the cinematography, the shots, the storytelling. It was done well. The pacing of the documentary, all of that stuff was good. I found some things, some things that you've heard in times past about what everybody's here for, what everybody knows him for. And oftentimes, when you come into contact with somebody who has a bigger quote unquote star than you at a certain period in time, it tends to eclipse the individual, right? And I think I saw on one of his press runs someone kind of negating all the things that he was doing up until the point that he met multiple names, right? Up until the time he signed with this particular record label, right? And so he's saying that, listen, no, I existed before that time. It's not now. And again, humans have the capacity. I'm artist, long time. You ran across my mind, artist. I said, wait, I not see artist in a long time. So I'm glad to see you. You literally ran across my mind the other day. So it's good to see you. I'm glad that you are doing well. So yeah, I saw the documentary. He is from Belize, right? Which is Central America, but you don't know already, Belize is one of the Guyanas of the conversation, where it's still Caribbean vibes going there, English speaking in Central America, much like Guyana is English speaking in South America, and it still has that vibe. She Carrie says, I'm happy he didn't let things make him. Yes, that's interesting. That was the part that I saw. Buana, long time. Wagwan. I saw that as well, that he didn't let it get him bitter. And that's kind of what I want to go into in the story, because anybody else who would have had this type of experience would have come out in a different way. So it was curious to see the way he came out. He's standing by a code, some type of unspoken code that he thinks other people are supposed to be adhering to, and he learned that that wasn't the case. But nonetheless, they said he said when he first came out, when they first deported him, much like they did Marcus Garvey, right? You come here, you do something, then they dip you. So they deported him back to Belize, I think in 08, 09. And when they did that, they said he rented out a hotel and he just stayed in there for the longest time. He didn't know what he was going to do. He needed direction. For some reason, I thought he converted to Orthodox Judaism while he was in jail. But come to find out, he converted afterwards. And so I wanted to look into that a little bit. This is where I'm going with the story. So I gave my thoughts on the overall documentary. I like documentaries. I thought it was a good one. Sorry. His father. I want to start there because when I'm listening, I'm hearing a pattern. I'm hearing a pattern in the conversation, right? So I'm just going to give the overview, then we're going to read a little bit of Wikipedia that is changing by the moment. When I went on here last week, when I was supposed to do this video, it didn't say all this stuff. But by the time I came back this week, Wikipedia done uploaded on me. You understand? That's what I get for getting distracted. But anyway, his father, as some may know, some may not, was Prime Minister but at the time he was still in government in Belize. What I found curious, and they interview his father as well, is that his father had another woman, and his father impregnates his mother, Shyne's mother. And so Shyne's mother is this outside woman, right? And the father builds that because he's into politics, he builds this political career with the official family, and he's kind of on the outskirts. And essentially, his mother comes to America, and he's there with his family members. And ultimately, when he comes to America around 8 or 9, something like that, and his mother decides that she's not sending him back. So I find that setup very curious, because that would make a lot of the people, when I'm looking at this bad boy records conversation, you think about what draws people towards an organization. You think about what draws people into something. And when one thing that did make me a little cringy, I don't know if it's because of the news now, but they kept calling, and I know that's what they said the name of the studio was, but it's still cringy. Daddy's House, right? Is the name of the studio. I felt cringy every time he said it on the documentary. I'm like, yo, can y'all call it something else? Like, call it DH or something. But anyway, I found that these people, much like Biggie Small's story, these young men who didn't have these father figures, much like Sean Puffy, P. Daddy, all these named Combs, much like all of these people, they have a father wound. They have a father issue, and of as abandonment or absentee, or you see this common thread that now they not only gravitate towards one another and looking for this direction, but they also congregate at this place called Daddy's House. Like, nah, bruh. But anyway, that was a side note. That was my mind. Maybe I'm bugging. Y'all let me know. I was like, what? I know, like, who named it that? Anyway, so yeah, that's my overall thoughts, and that's kind of where I'm gonna go. I'm gonna hone in on the life before he gets to the point where he feels like he needs to put himself in between, because according to him, it wasn't his beef, right? According to him, it wasn't his beef. So if it wasn't his beef, why did he feel compelled, right? That's another story for another day. But anyway, I'm going to share my screen. We're going to read a little bit about this. Oh, see, I didn't even go that far. She's Carrie. She said Shine's father's wife is 6 years older than Shine. I didn't even go that far. I really just, that's curious. Y'all know me. I'm trying to stay on the surface, because I started a novel challenge, and in 7 days, I wrote the whole book, Madame, with Jeff ChatBT. So I'm kind of a little spent right now. And so I'm trying to stay on the surface. I promise I'm trying to stay on the surface. So, but I definitely appreciate that. That's an interesting thing right there. So let's go ahead and look a little bit up this updated, what do you call this here? This updated Wikipedia. And then from there, it will make sense, because looking from the outside, when you don't know certain things, you're like, okay, that was weird. Orthodox Judaism, why did he do that, right? So let me take this thing off, and then let's take a look and do my favorite thing, which is, or one of them, which is to learn. So okay, boom. And like I said, they updated the snot out of this thing since this what you call it dropped. They are heavily updating this. Okay, so when you look him up, he changed his name to Moshe or Moses Michael Levi Barrow. Like, he put everything in there, but he was born Jamal Michael Barrow. So he put Moshe and he took off Jamal. Okay, he's Belizean, right? So we went over that, and he moved to New York as a child. One thing, and I'm just going to touch on all the things that I saw curious that I could identify a little bit, and people on the outside don't. He was talking about people trying to say, this is in some of the conversations, that he's code switching, not realizing that he is authentically Belizean, and also in his formative years came to a place where he was impressionable, and where he adapted this speech of talking like you're from New York. And some people who hear it don't understand the ability to move in and out of it, and it all being authentically you. It's like the person who knows how to speak English, but they also know how to speak Spanish, right? And they can authentically move between the two. But for some reason, I guess when you're speaking not necessarily a different language, but you're speaking English in a different way, people think it's weird. Now, Buana says he's code switching. Um, as I heard him say, and I would have to agree, if you're speaking to a specific audience that you resonate with both, and you're speaking, as I heard him say it, right? I'm trying to hear all sides. If he's in Belize and he's speaking to Belizeans, and that is from 0 to 8 or 0 to 9 or however old he was, that's the accent that's going to come out, right? So when it says code switching, again, we could talk about that. I think we've spoken about that before. One would say, Amuna, if I go around Jamaicans or Caribbean people, naturally, your inclination towards talking about it talking in a certain way is going to come out. If I'm angry, you're going to hear more of Caribbean than you will hear how I'm speaking now. So again, Buana said we'll talk about it later. So let's continue. Cause Buana try. I told y'all my mind right now. I'm trying to let me continue here. So he changes his name to Moshe or Moses, and he is currently the leader of the opposition party in Belize House of Representatives. Right? He looks totally different, by the way. He looks like a totally different person. It even begs the question, did he have a different energy, a different spirit on him, even when he was trying to survive? Like, according to him, they were poor. Back to his mother, they were poor, they didn't have any resources. He was shot, according to him, and he's trying to find his way out of this situation. And he sees that this rapping, like a lot of people did at that time, was going to get them out. Let's continue. His mother lived in Brooklyn, East Flatbush, and if anybody is from New York, Brooklyn, East Flatbush, you know that this is Little Caribbean. As a matter of fact, in today's time on maps in New York, it is now dubbed the Little Caribbean. Back in the day, it was just East Flatbush, but now it's actually called Little Caribbean on the map. So shout out to East Flatbush. Let's continue. Well, after being discovered freestyling in a barbershop, so they went all over this in the particular. They went over this, but this is not the part of interest for me. Again, you can read it at your own discretion. Okay. It says that while he was serving a prison sentence, he became interested in Judaism, becoming observant. So he actually did. The way they showed it, I thought it was after, but okay. So when he gets released, he gets deported to Belize, and then he moves to Jerusalem, right? And he lives there for about 2 years. And it says he spent time studying the Torah up to 12 hours a day, which I think is really cool. And I think this kind of speaks to why we see the change to a certain degree in him, why you see this evolution. Because if you look at Moses or Moshe, it's interesting that he picked that name, because Moshe was actually the person who he wasn't defending himself, he was defending his people against others, right? He was defending when the according to the narrative, when the slave drivers were assaulting the children of Israel, Moshe murders someone, not intentionally, but he strikes them because he's trying to protect somebody else. So in this storyline, y'all know I'm gonna go a little bit deep. In the storyline, he Amsa, welcome to the conversation, finds himself in this precarious situation because he is trying to protect, according to his narrative, his producer. According to his narrative and the documentary, he doesn't have any beef with these guys because he knows these guys. In the same way that Moses knew the Egyptians because it said that he grew up in the house. So I could see, of all the names, he could have named himself Dawid, he could have named himself Joshua, he could have named himself Abraham. I find it curious that he named himself Moses, and I kind of understand reading and studying the Torah myself, right? So anywho, he moves to Jerusalem, but it didn't just pop out of nowhere, right? The reason why he was attracted, according to what he said, he was attracted because of he wanted to go to the source. So he didn't want to go to Christianity, but there is more reason as to why, and we're going to look at it in a minute, right? So let's jump down. Early life. This is usually where it happens, right? This is usually where things get popping, and then they start rolling from there. So we already went over his name, Jamal Michael Barrow. According to, I think it's either an interview I heard him say or the actual documentary, that the wife of the father didn't want him to, and I don't know if this is the same wife. That's another thing I had a question about. Is it the same woman, or was it another woman? I don't know that part. But she didn't want him to be named, so the father didn't put his name on the birth certificate. Something to the, so totally, that's an injury for the mom and an injury for the baby during that time, right? And then you have to see that this guy is like all in parliament, this, that, and the third. His name is Barrow, like his dad, and his name he changes his name to Moses. He changes his name to Moses Levy, but his name was always Michael. So he drops Jamal and then he puts Moshe. That's his name, right? So his mother, Frances Emion, and hopefully I said that correct, Myvet, and father Dean Barrow, who were not married, and they made sure to let us know that. Yeah, somebody's actively updating this. Shyne's mother is the sister of Michael Mavette, now going by the surname Finnegan. And that surname gave me a little bit of flashback with the whole Candace Owens looking for Beryl Finnegan. I was like, no, not another Finnegan. But anyway. It says one of Dean Barrow's longtime political colleagues in Belize. So his uncle, according to the documentary and this, his uncle, which is his mother's brother, is also into politics. So the players in the game are his maternal uncle and his father are both into politics. And his mother gets belly from his father, right? But they don't marry because he's already involved. All right. It says Barrow's middle name comes from his uncle. Shyne's Jewish maternal grandmother had immigrated from Ethiopia to Belize. And I found that curious. Y'all know me. But I didn't go digging because, again, I'm tired a little bit. So they definitely have links to these articles if you're interested in that. Boana's saying that Carrie says she can't be the same wife. I was thinking maybe not. Like I said, that would take some more research. And yeah, so y'all tell me what y'all know, what y'all found. But yeah, they're both coming from these political families. But according to the narrative, the mother leaves. I don't know if because you could come from a family who got money, that don't mean you got money, right? So for whatever reason, she leaves and then she comes to America and she doesn't have resources. Okay, she doesn't have resources, and this is in the late 80s going into the 90s, where East Flatbush in that time, Brooklyn, period, New York was, you understand? So it says, as a child, Barrow's time was divided between his mother in Brooklyn and his lawyer politician father, who initially failed to acknowledge his son and was years later. So that part right there, because the way the father, let me know if y'all saw the documentary, the way the father said it, I was like, sir, we're gonna need some more information. Why are you just giving us like half of the story? Like come out with it more, He was like, I said some things, and I don't know why they all talking like that. He was like, I said some things that I shouldn't even repeat. I'm like, sir, what were the things? What were the things? So essentially, wait. He was like, essentially he was verbal about not accepting his son. So that rejection, in addition to the other experiences, weighed on him, right? So he's saying that, he needed that hard experience. And sometimes that's how we reason to ourselves. You understand? He needed that experience to make him who he was today. But bruh, come on. But anywho, it says Barrow's mother moved to the United States when he was 3 years old, leaving her son between the care of mother brother Michael and his father's sister Denise in Belize City. So again, now your father's not there, and you are, and they did show the aunt and they showed the uncle, right? And you are there with, you have this abandonment on both sides. Let me just put it bluntly. You have these issues on both sides, even though what can a 3-year-old reason, really, right? So yeah, let's continue here. Let's continue here. Where are we? Where are we? I'm just weaving in what they said there. His father was in a relationship with another woman, and Barrow recalls the ninja said, not the ninja said, the ninja said his two other kids were made out of love. It was devastating. So they were alluding to something. They were alluding to something and in the documentary. And I was like, what did he say? According to the father, he said some stuff that ought not to be said. So I guess that is what he said. I guess that's what he said, right? Which is not something you should say to a child. The father didn't elaborate. Yeah, I know. I saw that. Yeah, I think it's clear that he didn't want no smoke, right? He didn't want no smoke because how did you know that the child that you rejected, the stone that the builder refused, was the head cornerstone? How would you know? How would you know? So according to Barrow, according to Shyne, Moshe Lewy, okay, he was like, the ninja said that his other two kids was made out of love, and it was devastating. All right. So when he was 7 years old, so 4 years passed, he moves to Brooklyn. So it is very plausible that his Brooklyn accent is equally him as his Belizean accent. Okay. I don't know why when we hear accent switches, we are just like also like, oh my goodness, I can't believe. I mean, I don't know. I guess it does something to our computer program. Do not compute, do not compute. But 7 years old in Brooklyn, I know people who were born in New York but were raised in Florida, and they have more of a Floridian accent than they do a New York accent. You would never know they were born in New York. Are they pretending to speak like they're from the South? Or is that the language that developed when they were at that age? You know what I mean? Anyway, let's see here. So he was 7. He moved to Brooklyn to live with his mother in Crown Heights, East Flatbush, in near poverty while spending summers in Belize with his father. So by this time, he's aware of who the father is. He's going back and forth, and who knows what the conversation is during that time, right? The contrast. So it's not that he doesn't know who his father is, but it is that the relationship that he's supposed to have, he doesn't. And this ultimately leads him to the path that he ended up on, right? His mother supported them by cleaning homes and taking care of children. And he slept on the sofa of their small apartment on Church Avenue in East 18. Oh, he was around the way. He was around the way. Okay. Okay, yeah, East Flatbush. Okay. After he moved to Brooklyn, he began to develop a strong interest in the hip hop culture because again, this would be late 80s, early 90s. So at 15, while in a fight, and they talked about this fight, right? He was shot in his shoulder by another kid in Flatbush, leaving him with a 6-inch scar. So he was talking all about how his mother was over, she was stressed. Like she brought the child here to try to see better. Clearly something was going on in Belize why she felt the need to leave and come and suffer here, right? And he comes here and nearly gets himself taken out. And this is before he gets to Bad Boy Records, right? So he graduates high school 3 years later, and of which he spent attending high school in Belize at Wesley College in 1993. He enrolled in New York City College of Technology computer program. He paid for his tuition by working as a bike messenger, buying an 18 speed, and they showed that, right? They kind of did a little, I like how they did it. They had a little actor recreate the scene, but people were speaking of how they saw him during that time and what he was doing. But there was something about the granny. Hold on one second. We could definitely, people are here because of his musical notoriety, but it was something about the granny. Look at this. He looks very much different today than he did here. Here he still looked troubled. It looked like in his quest to seek truth, that spirit that was on him, because this is 2010, that spirit that was on him came off. Right? Look at this picture here. This picture, what in the world? If you look at this picture and you look at how he looks today, there was definitely a spirit on him. He looks like a totally different person. A totally different person. So let's continue here. It's the granny one. Somebody is editing the sneasel out of this. Here we are. Incarceration and Judaism conversion. So they're saying that 2 years after he went in, I thought it was later on, but Shyne began serving his sentence at the maximum security prison, Clinton Correctional, in Dannemora, New York. His legal that place sounds familiar. Isn't that the same place they held Tupac? Dannemora. That place sounds familiar. His legal team requested for an appeal for a suspended sentence, which ultimately failed. And by the way, he goes all into, how he felt about the trial. I find it interesting that today there's a legal team trying to put a gag order. I'm not going into that right now on the documentary. I find it curious, but we're going to continue. It says, during his time, Shyne attempted to spit on Combs after the latter trial to offer him $50,000 in cash to, quote, take the fall. So that's what has been maintained. Now, that sentence reads kind of weird. That sentence reads well. But anyway, yeah. It says Barrow has said that from the age of 13, he began to identify as an Israelite. Curious. Because if he's in East Flatbush, right? If he's in New York in the 90s, which he is, street Israelites, street preaching and street Israelites are all over the place, right? So there's a lot of people who see people, dumping their Bibles, reading it. Just because they don't adhere doesn't mean they haven't seen or they haven't heard. So I think it's interesting, and they're going to go a little further. After that, after learning that his great grandmother was a descendant of Beta Yisrael, ancient Ethiopian Jews. When I read that, I was like, let me look at his face again. He does kind of give something familiar. You know what I'm saying? He does kind of give something familiar. And so I was trying to look up, I did briefly try to look at some migration patterns, because that's an interesting place to be flying from Ethiopia to Belize. That's an interesting migration. I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I was just looking at when was the time that this type of migration was happening. But yeah, I like I said before in other streams, I've had opportunities to sit with Beta Israel, to talk to them, to capture their stories. A lot of that stuff is on old computers, but nonetheless, I digress. It says, as a teenager, he began to study Judaism and the Old Testament on his own and to pray daily. In March 2006, he changed his name legally to Moses Michael Levy Barrow. So that's when he changed his name. By that time, he would have, no, he wasn't out yet. I don't think he wasn't out. So he changed his name in prison. He had already been studying Judaism at the time of his arrest. And this is the conflict, right? You are studying Torah at the time of his arrest. And that means you have to have some type of self-conscious awareness that you're in a place that you really don't belong. You know what I mean? That's kind of weird. That's the conflict, because you don't really have that guidance, so to say. You end up in this place. I don't know. I didn't see him say those things before. Again, I'm just seeing this stuff updated now. Buwana says he had 4 great grandmothers. Where were they Beta Israel as well? I mean, I think it's coming from his mother's side. That's what I read before. Again, they're changing this as we speak, but I think it came from his mother's side. I read that in another article that I was trying to find. If you give me a minute, I could come over it again. But let me continue here. Do 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 do. Where are we? So he's studying roughly. Is he with some type of camp, some type of organization? Like, what was he into? That's curious. I don't think he's telling the whole story here, but let me continue. He had already been studying Judaism at the time of his arrest. In prison with rabbis, he became a practicing Jew, keeping kosher and celebrating the Jewish Shabbat and Jewish holidays. Not holidays, supposed to be holy days, but okay. He formally converted to Orthodox Judaism in Jerusalem, Israel, in 2010. I have my thoughts. I shall reserve them for now. Furthermore, as he had started to observe the Shabbat, why are they putting Jewish Shabbat? I'm going to continue. He was completely unavailable for any publicity contacts on Friday nights and Saturdays. Because in the documentary, he speaks about going to Jerusalem, living there for 2 years, becoming ultra orthodox. Remember, he had the two little pairs on the side of his head, the little curly cues. He was shaving his head off. Like, he was going in. He was 10 toes down. He was in there, right? And it appears that he got to a certain point where he bucked the wall, because the reality is the state of Ethiopian Jews in Israel is similar. And they may have given him concessions, because one of the guys in the documentary was like, oh, when he realized it was Shyne. But they may have given him concessions because he was a level of a celebrity. But the state of many Ethiopian Jews in Israel, and just a little backstory before we go forward. If we don't know, now we know, right? Is that there were two operations. And I spoke to some of the people that this happened to, right? Real life, like I'm speaking to you. And what we read about is Operation Solomon, Operation Moses, right? So there's these two operations where they airlift in the middle of the night without warning, right? Without any ability to prepare, and start airlifting people and breaking up families. That's what a lot is not told about that part, that some went and some stayed, and some to this day have been waiting to go and have it, right? And so they tore these families and they broke these families, and some stayed and some went, and they took them to Israel. But now you have these dark-skinned Jews, because before that they're like, oh, we know they're Jews, we've done the testing, they have the information. And this is one of the things that attracted me among the Rasta conversation to go to Ethiopia, and see for myself. Long story short, when they got to Israel, now they're treated like Kushi, which is, their slang for trying to call somebody a ninja, right? They're treated like the Negroes of the Middle East. You understand? The government in some places was giving them benefits. These Ethiopians were giving them benefits, but under the guise of eugenics, meaning giving them, the women were getting shots, and they didn't understand that the shots were actually birth control. And so there's some documentaries and investigative reporting that goes into this. I say all that to say a little bit of backstory. When he gets there, even though they may be like, oh, you're Ethiopian Jew, on the bottom of the barrel, is the Ethiopian Jew amongst, well, I'll take that back. On the all the way bottom of the barrel is the Hebrew Israelites who came from America going to the land, because that's another story. In the social structure of the society. And then you have the Ethiopian Jews, who they're looking very much to integrate into society, lose their culture, lose their heritage. So I think when he goes there, it's a reality check. I just stopped right there to say all that. So he ultimately leaves after 2 years to go back to his country, because if he converted to Orthodox Judaism, then by right, he can make Aliyah, and then he can live in the land perpetually, right? So there's something that happened in that process, especially in the Orthodox space, that he may not have been as accepted as he wanted to be. Hold on one second. Let me jump down here. The Ethiopian Jew story is quite interesting. Let's go here. Jerusalem. Give me 1 second. 1 second. So here we are at Jerusalem. In 2010, Shyne moved to Jerusalem. And in November of 2010, he was living in Jerusalem, having become observant and legally changing his name to Moshe Michael Lewi. He spent his time learning the Torah and spent up to 12 hours a day studying it. He said that there was nothing at odds between the hip hop world and being a Torah observant Jew, which I found curious. Like, how were you able to pull that off, sir? Nothing? I don't know. I don't know about that, but I'll continue. There's nothing in the Kamash that says that he can't drive a Lamborghini. In Jerusalem, he underwent a formal conversion to Orthodox Judaism. So he didn't just say he wanted to be a secular Jew, or he didn't say he wanted to be a liberal. He wanted to be orthodox, like the ultra orthodox, right? He also prayed wearing tefillin. The fact that they keep calling, anyway, let me continue. In the morning, studied Talmud, which is interesting because he went out of, the Torah, and then he ended up in the Talmud, which, right? Did he stop his orthodoxy because it seems like he cut his curly sideburns? Yeah, I think he kind of, I thought about that when I was watching the documentary. And sometimes when the pendulum swings so far to one side, and then the momentum takes it all the way back to the other side, and then when it finds its place, then you get equilibrium. I think that's what happened to him. Like, he went so orthodox, that's like turning the heat up too hot, that he had to now find his equilibrium, because orthodox, they add some things into the conversation. That's not Torah. The Torah says do not add or take away from, right? And so when you add things in there or take away things or manipulate things in certain ways, it now makes it become this heavy load for people to carry. That's just my thoughts. Y'all don't come for me. My observation. With rigorous, strictly Orthodox rabbis at the Or Shamiak, Belz, and Mir yeshivas, and grew payot, like he got warned by some men in Orthodox Jewish community based on the interpretation of the requirements of Jewish law. Because it says, this is what I'm talking about. It's the interpretation. Do not shave the sides of your head. Torah gives this. So they interpret it to cutting off the rest of the hair and then just leaving a patch on the side. Like, let me just continue. It says, where are we? He had studied seriously with rabbis while in prison and adopted the Jewish law to create boundaries and order in his life. And that it will do. It will create boundaries and order. And for people who, some people feel like, oh, they don't need no boundaries and order. Okay. We see a definite difference between what he looked like then and what he looked like now. So something had to have happened. It says I said that already. Where are we? He studied and then he adopted. He officially changed his name. We already said that, to Moses Levi, to reflect the commitment to Judaism. He said his entire life screams that he has a Jewish neshama, or soul in Hebrew. And again, when you go through a lot of persecution, you will find that you can relate to a lot of what is going on in the biblical narrative. That is the thought of some people when I looked at the connections between Hebrewisms and slavery, and how a lot of parallels were drawn in literature, in preaching, between the Israelites' captivity and the captivity of enslavement in transatlantic slave trade. But I don't want to go off there. But so I could totally see why he would pick Moshe, because his story more aligns with Moses because of the whole murder, runaway thing, and all that other stuff. Let's continue. Do 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 do. Okay, I didn't know this part. Nice little tidbit. In April 2012, he traveled to Kiev, Ukraine, where he was featured speaker at a conference or interreligious understanding. The conference called Global Winds of Change: Religion's Role in Today's World, the Challenges in Democracies and Secular Societies. Yo, whoever came up with the conference name, it's not fitting on the letterhead. What kind of conference name? Bro, what in all of mission statement is going on with the conference name? Y'all please sit with me. I'm tired. When I get tired, man. What? Yo, they put a whole mission statement in the conference name. Who did that? Anyway, it says here. Hey, by the way, I don't have a commercial to run, but a new book is out, peoples. Madame, the new book is out. I'm gonna drop the link in the box. I think I have a. Do I have a commercial to run? The new book is out. Okay, the 7-day Chat GPT challenge. I made it up, y'all. So I wrote a whole novel in 7 days. I just completed it. Yesterday was the 7th day. Definitely check it out. The link is also on in the chat, and the link is also on the community board. All right. And chapter 1 is up there. So y'all check it out, man. Y'all check it out. Let's continue. Where we? All right, boom. Michael jump down now. So basically, he went back to Belize in 2013, and this, that, and the third. And he got married. I didn't realize he got married. He got married in 2017. So there's another article I think I wanted to read. Okay, we're going to read this article right here real quick. The older articles, again, because this was when it was just happening or recently happened. Discourse said, yeah, the accent bust out. Yeah, when I get tired, man, when I get tired, it have to come out. And get me look at them tired. But anyway, we're gonna finish this up. We can finish it up. And then I'm gonna give my closing thoughts. Let me know. Oh, wait, no, wait. Before we go over there, so make we look on the father now. Right? So the father, this storyline of rejection, of abandonment. If you look at the list of prime ministers of Belize, and you scroll and you scroll and you scroll, okay, we're gonna scroll here, and wait, me pass him or him there. See me, Dean Barrow, okay, from 93 to 98, 5 years and 57 days. So this is the father here. He was also in the documentary. He's not giving, I don't know what I was getting. You know, when people interview, when they talk, you get a certain energy from them. I might have to watch it again. I'm not fully sure. He was giving politician energy. He was giving politician energy. I wasn't really getting the full, you know what I mean? His mother, I really got that she was concerned. She really didn't care about, the fame. She was concerned. She feared for the loss of her child, that he would be hurt, right? I got that, the anxiety. I got that from his mother, right? But I still don't get how much his father understands the role that his behavior played in this experience. I didn't really fully get that, you know what I mean? But anyway, I don't know the man. I'm just saying what I picked up. So he was born March the 2nd. Interesting. March the 2nd, 1951. Let's jump down. He was an attorney. Then he became deputy prime minister, 93. So around the time that he comes to America, or a little bit after, because he comes here when he's what did they tell us? 7. So he comes in a few after he comes to America, his father goes higher up. Let me jump down here. I didn't even know British Honduras. No wonder I didn't know Belize was once British Honduras. Look at me learning something new every day. Who knew that Belize was once British Honduras, which makes sense now that they speak English. She's Carrie said he was giving cloud chase. Yeah, I don't the energy didn't really sit properly. You know what I mean? I don't yeah, it never sit all the way with me. But we're just spectators, you know what I mean? It no give. It's like and then I was like, wait, did they throw the lady under the bus? They threw the how is this man? You have a pitney, right? You have a child. And you allow the woman that you're with for you to disown your child? So the fact that they threw the lady who's not here to speak for herself under the bus, can the lady please step to the front of the class? Because they threw you under the bus. We need answers, right? Why did you do this? Anyway, the father, oh, okay, he was in America at one point. He graduated from the University of Miami, and then he returned to Belize and he went into the legal profession in 1974, working with his maternal uncle, Dean Lindo. Okay, so the Jewish comes from the father. I'm thinking the Jewish comes from the father because Lindo is a Jewish name. I remember that from my slave narrative reading. Ah, uncle, maternal uncle. So his mother's brother. Right. So for Shyne, it will be from his father's side. And this is why he was able to claim because oh, that's curious. I don't know. Wait a minute. They have changed the laws that it has to go through your mother. So that's why I was assuming that the Beta Yisrael had to be on the side of his mother. However, it's saying here, Dean Lindo. I could just be reading into it, but Lindo is a Jewish name from the last time I checked. But anyway, to partner in Lindo's firm in 1977. So by that time, Yashai Naban Yetina. He eventually left to form his own firm. Okay, they jumped. You see that time frame right there? You know how we like to drill down into time frames? When he comes back to Belize and he is now a lawyer, it's in and around this time that Shyne mother breed. Because as we could see, the dates right here, they gave us a date and then they just dropped it off clean. I like how y'all did that, but I don't got your time right now. So we're going to continue. We are going to continue. All right. So that is a little something about the father. A little something about the father. And then now we're going to go to this article and then we're going to call it a day. Gangster rapper Shyne, now an Orthodox Jew, plans comeback. And they were also talking, ill of that his music wasn't the same anymore. Because when you were really listening to what he was rapping, I remember when he came out. I remember all of this stuff like yesterday, right? The energy was heavy. If you read some of the lyrics, there's definitely a conflict between what you were rapping about and what you now became. So I don't know how he doesn't see that there was a conflict, but there was definitely a conflict. Okay. But let's jump down here. See? I didn't read this one. This is the first time I'm reading it. Shyne, who legally changed his name in prison from Jamal Burrows to Moses Lewi. Moses is one of his favorite biblical heroes, and Levi is for the Levites who were musicians during temple times. And Moses was a Levite, you know what I mean? So I knew that he had to have some type of affinity towards Moses specifically. And there you go. And it also shows you, sometimes people lean towards one story or another because of something that, they identified with. So anywho, let's see here. Remember, New York, the prison rabbis coming to New York, Rikers Island. In prison culture, everyone is trying to make a scam. Everyone is a con artist. So who is this dark, skinny guy, they wondered? Does he just want the Jewish food? And I heard the other day from the report within the system that somebody didn't want to eat the food. And they were telling them, tell them that you're Jewish so that you can get kosher food. Anyway. Acts Lewi, now cloaked in the black garb of Hasidic Jew and living in Jerusalem. So this is 2011. So this was some time ago. A guy with payas Maybe they might believe him, he tells JTA, laughing. So he went all in. He didn't just put it on the ZTO without the ribbon of blue. He went all in, okay? It says at that time he was 32, former protege, and they go into that. It says he found himself drawn to Judaism ever since hearing Old Testament stories from his grandmother as a boy. Still not telling us which grandmother though. He was with Combs and then girlfriend Jennifer Lopez. Salika, sorry. Okay. You see how one decision gets you entangled in an entanglement where every time they call this person's name, they're gonna call your name. Yeah, that's when you get into these soul ties. Like they're going to Jerusalem and talk, and then boom, you just threw us into the prison sentence. Anywho, Levi credits Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz, one of his attorneys, with helping him gain access in prison to prayer books and other religious items like talit and tefillin. And talit is supposed to be the fringes, the white fringes, and the tefillin is the stuff they wrap all around themselves. Now, as he walks through the alleyways of Jerusalem, Old City, on his way to the Western Wall, he clutches a worn prayer book whose maroon leather cover was torn off by prison officials for security purposes. So this is what got him through. Based on what I'm reading, his ability to hold on to something and believe in something greater than himself is what got him through. And they asked him, I believe they asked him, they say, man, usually people become Muslim. Why did you not become Muslim? That's usually like the go-to. And according to him, he wanted to go to the source, which is where Islam and Christianity is getting their instruction from. Let's continue. Doo-doo. He said he was studying with several Haredi Orthodox rabbis from some of the most stringent yeshivas in Jerusalem. A few months ago, Levi said he underwent a type of conversion called Giyar Lekurmra, a conversion usually for those who likely are Jewish but undergo conversion just to be on the safe side. So again, they're like, you might be Beta Yisrael. And this is exactly what they did to Beta Yisrael, right? Oh, yes, we found you in your home, and yes, you had all of these traditions, and yes, you have all this family history, but just to be safe, why don't you convert? That makes sense. That didn't never make sense to me. He says, I'm looking for a connection to Hashem, and Hashem being the name, Hashem literally means the name, right? Grown Up Jamaica says Destiny Switch at its best. Yeah. And that's why thank you for that one. For those who have just joined us, welcome to the conversation. I did like 5-6 videos on destiny swapping, right? And how people's destiny can be stolen temporarily and it can be then exchanged. So what we're looking at now, to what Grown Up Jamaican just said, is that he says it wasn't him. And the lady who was there, she's doing a lot of interviews as well. She's saying it wasn't him, right? He's saying he did have something, but what he's being accused of wasn't him. So then he takes the destiny of someone else, but it's borrowed. It's borrowed, right? It's not something that, it's something that, as we can see, he was able to get restored. And now at the time of his restoration, the other person, so you don't escape essentially. You don't escape what people think they do, but it's only borrowed time. It's only borrowed time. And if you haven't seen that one, I'll put the link in the box for that destiny swap. That was a good little Bible study right there, but let's continue. So he said he was looking for a connection to the Creator. Levi says, this thing pushed your thing down, people. Using the Hebrew name for God. That's the Hebrew name. Anyway, let me continue. I'm not trying to weaken it, he says. I want to know what is done when I can decide if I'm up to it. What did Moshe do? What did the sages say? Again, the sages said a lot of things. Levi feels like he's returning to the fold. His days are spent in study and prayer. So if he was fronting, right, if it was pretense for him to get some kosher meals in the can, he would have already just switched up as soon as he came out. He would have just popped out and went back to what he was doing. The fact that he was still searching shows that there was a level of authenticity from the viewer, that he was committed at this time to what he was saying when what he was doing, right? Bishop Medino. He said, so he's praying and he's studying. He reminders of his newly acquired Jewish education come up in his rapid fire Brooklyn accent speech, smattered with Hebrew words and Talmudic and biblical references. So again, it comes out, it goes in. This accent, this Brooklyn accent, a New York accent, a down south accent, it goes out and it comes in, right? And so it's interesting that at this time, the interviewer is noting that. It says he's an anomaly in more ways than one. It goes on to talk about his father and the fact that he grew up in New York and his mother was a housekeeper or cleaner. It says, but Larry soon was enamored with life on the streets, becoming a gang member. So imagine you're a politician and your job is to try to meet the people where they are and get the people their needs met and, power to the people. But your son is out here in need of direction and you are over here shepherding the people. So he goes to the street, becoming a gang member, they said. I don't know that part, but okay. He was in and out of trouble, and at the age of 13, he was sent away to a juvenile center. And by 15, he had been shot. So his mom's is questioning. According to her in the documentary, she was concerned that he was lonely there, and when she wanted to have him to stay with her. So at this time, she might be questioning because she's just worrying about how bills are going to be paid, right? And she might be questioning her choice to bring him and keep him, being that he's ending up in these very precarious situations. Anywho, he goes on to say he went to prison and then he adopted Judaism and then he moved to Israel. And then now he wants to do an album and then jump. It says at the Western Wall Plaza, he encounters a group of young religious Ethiopian Israelis. So they're not Jews no more. When they got there, they was Jews, and now they're Israelis. But Levi's great-grandmother was an Ethiopian Jew, and he thinks she may have been Jewish. And another thing that I forgot about this whole Ethiopian Jew conversation is that, according to what they told me, this was the group represented in Addis Ababa, is that there was one set, right? They migrated. They went through the whole thing of how they migrated and they came down into Ethiopia and how they left and what's the lore of how they got there. And they went to, the name just jumped out of my head. It's further north. It's not in Addis. The name it'll come back. Anyway, then the group split, right? And according to the conversation, when the group split, some stays in now I'm gonna have to see where the Israel is. Hold on one second. Some stays in the north and others migrate to Addis Ababa, which ultimately becomes the capital. But what happened was forced conversion. And so there were those that's why they said she could have been Beta Yisrael, but at the time she could have also been a Christian. And the reason is there was forced conversion happening. There was a religious persecution. There was religious persecution in the land. And I know the Amara region. Hold on one second. There was religious persecution at the time, and they converted. Some secretly continued to keep their ways, and others did not. So the houses were split from Beta Israel, and the other house became Beta Abraham, right? And so Beta Israel is who is widely known, who were these outcasts within the culture, and Beta Israel and Beta Abraham kind of assimilated. So they are still Ethiopian Jews, but because they have assimilated into the culture and they don't want to stand out, they stop keeping Shabbat, they stop doing this, they stop doing that, and you wouldn't know unless you knew. And I'm trying to see where most of them. So let me continue. Next time I'll show you guys my little. Where in the world? Well, if you're interested in this, we could go over this more because this is an interesting concept that when a lot of organizations started going over there, they were exploiting them. They were exploiting them, getting to them to make and to write a lot of what you see, the prayer shawls, the pillows, the things of that nature. They were exploiting them, claiming that they were helping, but they really weren't. And that was the condition that I had found when I went there. But let me continue because I'm digressing. Yeah, Buana. Yeah, exactly. He looks like he turned his life around, and he looks like he's trying to move towards. He looks like, I can say he looks like. So for that you don't really see oftentimes that story being what it is. So I think that's important to note. I think it's important to know. But let me continue a little bit more. It said here, so this looks like it's before the time he went to Ethiopia. It says his great grandmother, it doesn't tell us on what side, was Ethiopian, and he thinks she may have been Jewish. Exploring his possibilities, Ethiopian Jewish heritage intrigues him. He plans to travel to Ethiopia in the spring and says he'd like to help fund a yeshiva for Ethiopian immigrants in the town of Beit Shemesh near Jerusalem. There's a lot. So yeshiva is what he could have made. No, Aliyah is what he could have made. He wants to fund a school. A yeshiva is a school. He wants to fund a school in the land, right? Um, and so the Israelites won't be whole and Messiah won't come. This is a quote, until all the tribes are connected to Hashem, Levi says, referring to the Ethiopian Jews as a lost tribe, an originally Jewish community cut off from the rest of the Jewish world for generations. And it's interesting to note that he's going to get this information from the persons or the people who are kind of strong arming the information. You understand what I'm saying? For instance, in recent times, there was a documentary that was done, The Jews of Nigeria, right? And it had to be self-funded by the man who went and did the documentary, because what they were finding is that not only were they in Nigeria, they were in Lemba, but the only ones that were, quote, recognized were, because it's like we can't be opening the door with all these dark people coming in here talking about their Jews, right? So I'm just saying that Shyne's perspective, the direction he chose to go was he met a blockade of some sorts, let's just say. Anyway, he finishes his evening prayers at the Western Wall before paying a visit to the protest tent next to the Prime Minister's residence and calls for the immediate release of Gilead Shiliat, the Israeli soldier who had been held captive by Hamas in Gaza for more than 4 years. He goes on and on and on. If you would like to read this, I'll put the link in the box. So, he starts doing some political stuff even at this point. He may have found that, whatever experience he had, it was time for him to take himself back home. And he goes back to Belize and tries to do what he can for his community. So his story is not like how many stories end up, but I thought it was curious. Again, like I said, the way the documentary was laid out, it was good. That's my feedback. That's my reaction. Let me know yours in the description or in the comment section below. I'm going to go ahead and take a nap. All right, everybody. Everybody have a blessed day, and we'll talk again soon. I gotta work on my commercial. Y'all.